Hello, staff. This is Dave Kostopoulos. I am the Executive Director of Curriculum and Assessment, if you don't know, for our school district. And I'm going to be giving a brief run-through of this PowerPoint regarding assessments and education. I wanted to thank Dr. Ross for putting this together, as well as Mrs. Kemp. And we're looking forward to seeing you at our meeting today. And here we go. Let me start this show. So the overall purpose of assessments, but really, in a nutshell, is to give feedback to students, to monitor how they're doing, to make sure that we're covering the standards that we are teaching, and that we're evaluating whether or not we're reaching that goal of students attaining those standards, and maybe they're attaining parts of the standard, and we need to go back and reinforce the rest. It's to look at where students need to improve and also where we can improve with the curriculum that we're presenting. Sometimes we notice through the assessments that maybe the materials that we're offering here at the district aren't covering them in a certain amount of depth that you need. If that's ever the case, please make sure you reach out to your administrators, to me, or it may be something that you see that you could use supplemental materials for. And things that you need to do more or less of. But it's also to recognize areas of strength and build upon them. So when you do, we're always looking at data and assessments, and we're always looking at the holes and what do we need to do better. But sometimes looking at our strengths and what's going well, and what the students seem to be retaining is really where the answers lie, because you're probably doing some phenomenal things with that unit or that particular lesson or standard, and maybe that's something that we can transfer, over to the other standards that the students are struggling with. Maybe there's certain practices you're using, or certain activities, or certain programs that you're using, that you could kind of pick out that seem to be more successful. And as always, these help make those informed decisions about curriculum. Here are just some quick assessment definitions and benefits. So diagnostic assessment, that's something that you're giving at the beginning of the year, such as MAP, and to help measure where the students are. And then you can start to identify where they're struggling and create lessons and group students, within certain categories from those diagnostic assessments. For example, MAP might tell you that certain groups of students are struggling with number sense and others are struggling with different skills. So you can group students for that small group instruction. An interim assessment, something that you give throughout the school year. And this might be something that's done either within your units or a particular supplemental program you're using. A lot of times we look at MAP as an interim assessment because we're giving it 3 times a year. So it is something that needs to be done throughout the school year. iReady would be another example. And I think some of you may use IXL and have students take the assessment, and then at some point in the year have them take it again so we can identify if they've grown or not, or if there's new skills or different skills they need to address. A formative assessment, that takes place during the instructional process. So that is something that you're doing, such as quizzes or exit slips. That helps you jump in the heat of it and know, wow, we taught this lesson today and they really understand this much of it, but there's some parts that we need to focus on before we move on. And that's okay. I think one of the toughest things that I remember from being a teacher is it's a struggle sometimes to move on if you felt like you still need to cover certain items and then you feel like you're going to get put behind. So now you start rushing through the content after that because you spent an extra day, to go over it. I think it's okay to spend some extra time when needed But I would also advise don't stay on that unit or island because a lot of the standards in skills, as you read them more closely, many of them, or not many of them, but there are quite a few of them that aren't meant to be mastered at your grade level. It is meant for them to get that exposure for multiple years. Um, so, keep that in mind. It's okay if not everyone's 100%, got it down on lock, right? So you got to just be able to move on, but it's also good then to go back when you have those extra times or to reinforce some of that material that you see students are struggling with that you want to touch on a little bit more. But please, as I was saying, don't get stuck on that island of a unit for too long because then you risk rushing through the rest. That's just my advice. Summative assessment. This is an assessment that takes place at the end of instruction. So this might be your end of unit assessment. What's really a good practice, in my opinion, for this is giving that summative assessment, um, going through, the grading process and then highlighting certain standards or skills or questions that students missed, that a lot of students missed, and those might be ones that you want to try to do a quick reteach on, um, as well as spiral back to throughout the school year if you feel it's something that you need to do. It's also a really good practice. I know it takes a little bit of time, but if you have some sort of a spreadsheet that you can put the questions all that the students answered and be able to check off who got them right, who got them wrong. It's a nice quick way to identify that. I actually have a template that I've created in the past, and I'll be sharing that with you at our meeting. Here is just some assessments that are utilized in School District 158, and I wanted to give you a little bit of background on some things regarding special education testing and other specific items that pertain to what we just spoke about. So pre and post assessments. For diagnostic, we could use MAP for diagnostic assessments. I take that at the beginning of the year. iReady is also a good example. Some classroom diagnostic assessments. You can use, like I said, a unit assessment spreadsheet that I'll be sharing with you. Some units or some curriculums have a pre-assessment, which would be like an assessment A, and then there's a assessment B form. You can give A before the unit if you'd like to identify where students are strong and where they need focus. That pre-assessment for that unit, if you could do it, might save you time on teaching things that you don't need to cover because the students already know it, and focus more time on where you see them struggling. And then you don't grade that you grade it, but you don't put it in the grade book. Give the assessment, use the spreadsheet, look at strengths and weaknesses, give the instruction for the unit, and then give the post assessment. Also, if you look at a lot of our supplemental programs, they do contain diagnostic assessments. We have the teacher created materials, ELA, and math intervention kits. We have classroom assessments, like I just said, that a lot of our programs do offer pre-assessments. Also, there's a lot of online supplemental programs like Brain Pop, IXL, et cetera, that can give you some diagnostic assessments that we purchase. Excuse me. Here's two things I just wanted to cover that we also do and all school districts do, but there's language proficiency for our English language learners. And I just wanted to give you a quick run through of how that works. So if a student comes in as a new student, every student we do this for, um, they answer the home language survey. And if answering that home language survey qualifies them, they would get a screener. And if they through that screener, they could qualify for EL services. Once students are identified as EL through the screener, then they take what's called the access test. They take that once a year, and that's to check for progress, and or it could test them out of the program. If they reach a certain score, at a certain score that they reach, however long that takes them, that would test them out of the program. They would not need to be in the EL program anymore. And then we have special education assessments. So when a student gets referred for special education for a domain. If after the domain meeting, it's decided by the team that they need a full case study, that would include speech, functional speech assessments, functional assessments, cognitive, academic assessments with OT and PT. We check hearing, vision. There's a social emotional piece that the social workers do. We're looking at their grades both that year and historically, behavior, which would be referrals, attendance, and their health data, their health history. So there's a lot that gets looked into, which is why, it does take time for those things to get completed. But that is what's needed for a full case study. If they do qualify, that's when you get into the placement and goal setting process with the IEP team. And then, you're really looking at how can you adapt instruction, how can you adapt assessments per the student's disability. So that's different for everyone. But as a teacher, if you have students with IEPs, it's important to look at those goals, look through the IEP documents, so you could pick out what works well for students, what's been identified through the testing, where are their strengths, where are their weaknesses. And when it comes to assessments, monitoring those goals and how can you help provide data, to show that they are making or not making those goals, or if they need to be adjusted. Interim assessments, again, for progress monitoring, shows whether or not the students are improving. This can also be considered or used as, for MAP. You could use report card data too as another way to look at it. I wouldn't look at any of these in isolation. Just like all assessments, I like to look at least three or more, so you can really get some consistency with what's going on there. Those quarterly and semester class assessments, again, gathering from multiple sources to develop an understanding of what students need. Here are some examples of formative assessments. Again, chapter unit tests, exit slips quizzes, polls and screenings. I see a lot of staff have used Microsoft Forms, our platform for that. So that is also something that you could utilize, to help get data back quickly from students in an organized way. So you're not having to do it all by hand. There's a lot of technology tools out there, again, on our platform that we offer, Microsoft Forms being one of them, because you could also set up quizzes in there. Summative assessments, MAP is a big one that we do. We take that 3 times a year, and it is nationally normed and has a lot of ways to look at students and group them and help teach them the skills that they need. And then the summative assessments, we have the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, which is done for grades, completed for grades 3 through 8 in reading and math every year. And we also have the Illinois Science Assessment, which is just for grades 5 and 8, but that is also every year. Closing remarks, I just have to say, we're all really, proud and happy to have you on board. We're over halfway through the year at this point, and just know that you're doing a great job. Every day, good things happen, and you see good data, and you also see data that you wish was better when it comes to assessments. And you just gotta keep on keeping on. It's not going to look the same every year. You have different groups of students. In some years, you'll see they did well on these assessments, and in other years, you'll get students that maybe have different struggles or different things that they're struggling with within your content area or content areas. So it's all about adjustments. It's all about pivoting and seeing what your students need at that time and delivering them the instruction that they need. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. I hope it wasn't too long-winded. Thank you.